What's up guys? Jared back again on my channel, TDXJ. About a year to the date ago, I shot a video talking about the intercooler setup on my 99 diesel swapped XJ. I showed you guys the ins and outs, kind of what I did, my solutions to fitting an intercooler in the front end of a Jeep, which is very difficult. But since it's been about a year, there's a lot of things that have changed. And I figured I'd come back to the exact spot that I shot that original video, and I would go over the updates to the newest intercooler setup and give you guys all the information of how I created a better solution for a front mount intercooler on TDXJ. Let's get into it. So one of the reasons I really like this spot is just because of the train tunnel that's here. This is Wernersville, Pennsylvania. That tunnel is pretty sick for photography. There's also a train that's always running back and forth through here, so you get to see the big diesel freight trains and things like that. But there's a lot of areas around here with a ton of history, and it's super quiet out here. I mean, there's some cars that drive by and things like that, but it's pretty remote. Nobody bothers me. There's old brick buildings. I don't know if you guys will be able to see all the way out in there, out over there. Yeah, there's an old brick building or whatever. Anyway, there's old brick buildings. Some of the buildings that are over that direction are where I like to take a lot of photos. So I like to come places like this because they're just nice to shoot these kinds of videos, especially when I'm not really doing a how-to. I'm just giving you guys some information. So let me pop the hood over here on the Jeep. I'm gonna show you guys the intercooler setup. So the first thing that I wanna do is show you what I did, and then we'll talk about why I did it. So let me set this down here. All right, so as I said, people would drive by sometimes, might see some cars, or that's probably one of the borough people or whatever. But anyway, guys, here is the front mount intercooler. As you can see, this is about 26 inches across. So this thing's pretty big. Now, one of the things that changed right away with the intercooler is I picked an intercooler that the inlet and outlet are on the same side, and that helped me out a lot with the pipe routing. Another thing that you might be able to see back here behind the grill, I'm now running 2-inch intercooler piping instead of 2.5. And there's a reason for that, and I had a theory and it proved to be correct, but we'll dive into that then. But I don't know if you guys remember, it used to be this big black intercooler. I had an inlet on one side, outlet on the other. I had to make piping go all the way across the bottom, and it just wasn't an efficient use of space for the Jeep. And the biggest problem that happened was I was blocking most of my radiator, which was causing not overheating, but higher temperatures than I thought were necessary for the 617 engine. So that solved a lot of that. As you can see, now I don't have anything except a core of an intercooler blocking the radiator. So I have very, very unrestricted airflow through the intercooler, which is awesome. And I also have this whole side of the radiator over here that's completely exposed. So I can tell you right away, the first thing I noticed was an immediate drop in temperatures, but we'll talk about the why in a second. As far as how I routed the pipes, it's exactly the same. Let me see if I can fish in here. Ooh. It's a little dark for you guys, but you can see those pipes are routed up through here, exactly the same, chopped out that opening over here in the cross member. Now, the one cool thing about this that I really like, that'll be hard for you guys to see, is the fact that the piping has more gradual transitions here. No longer do I have pie cut pieces that are really hard to manage. Everything is a pre-bent kit, an intercooler kit. And what that is actually doing, let me get this focused. Ooh, turn that ND filter down a little bit. What that's gonna do is actually create less restriction in the airflow as it's flowing through the intercooler piping. So it's very obvious right away, you guys can see all of this piping is 2-inch, it's much smaller. Okay guys, while I'm talking here, I switched focus methods on the camera so that we could see better. So anyway, I've got that special fitting here that goes from 2.5 inch to 2-inch. Same thing up here, it's an elbow, 2.5 inch, 2-inch. You can see that everything's nice bent transitions. On the bottom of these pipes, this one here for the charge side, this one here for the, I should say for the after the intercooler going into the intake, right off of the compressor, they're 180-degree turns on the bottom down in here. And so what that means is there's just such a free-flowing design here with the intercooler. It's much better, much more efficient. And because of the smaller piping, I was able to fit a second fan up in here behind the radiator, which ultimately up here behind the radiator, having that second fan also contributes to being able to pull more air through the front of the radiator, which is going to help my Jeep run cooler. I still just have that factory accessory fan on this side over here. Another thing that I switched to was an HE221 turbocharger over here. And if you guys remember in the other video, that HX30 turbo was really good for me, but the HE221 is definitely a better turbocharger, I think, for the OM617. And we'll talk about that in another video, but here, I'm gonna get this set up on the tripod. So ultimately, guys, the objective with the intercooler on this round was to get that bigger intercooler with less solid surface area stuff covering the radiator. The old intercooler worked really well. It kept the EGTs down, made the power that I needed to make. The OM617 wasn't overly smoky, so I know it was getting good, cool air to match that fuel and boost charge. But I had a couple things going on with that other intercooler setup. One, I think I had the incorrect turbocharger for this particular engine. As I mentioned, I switched to the HE221 turbo, much faster spooling turbo, much more efficient, and it still doesn't have a ton of drive pressures. So all of that is also adding to the efficiency. The 2-inch piping for the intercooler is going to add velocity in my mind. And I think 2 inch is probably the perfect diameter for the 617's output. I did a ton of reading and I talked to a bunch of buddies that build hot rods and things like that. And they're running 3-inch or 2.5 inch and 3-inch intercooler piping for like 600 and 800 horsepower engines. The reality is this is definitely not a 600 horsepower engine. So there's no need for the 2.5 inch or 3-inch piping for intercoolers. I just think it's a little bit overkill. So ultimately the 2-inch I think is a better solution for that. It allowed me to have more room for those fans. Like I said, this thing didn't overheat ever, but it did run warmer than I think that the OM617 should, and it wasn't the fault of the engine. I mean, it is kind of an old school engine and the coolant paths aren't that efficient, but it should run very cool being a diesel, unless you're under load or you're in really, really hot climates. But I'm not really in those situations. So seeing it at 210 degrees pretty often on the freeway in the summer was a little bit disconcerting to me. I definitely thought that it should be running around 190. And I can tell you guys that I barely ever flip on the fans with this rig, even in the summer, with this current setup. So I'm experiencing quicker boost. I'm experiencing more boost, less lag, less smoke, more power, and cooler engine temps as far as the coolant is concerned. So all in all, I think I struck this out of the ballpark. I'll put a link to this intercooler down in the description. The piping kits are just a universal piping kit. One little tidbit, one little recommendation I would make to you guys, anytime you're doing an intercooler, buy 2 kits. Don't just buy 1 pipe kit, because I almost always have found that I don't have enough fittings and things, and do the exact same thing with the boots that you are planning on using on this. Doesn't hurt to have extra stuff laying around. And plus then if you make a mistake while you're cutting your piping or trying to fit your intercooler, you don't really have to feel bad because you've got lots of extra pipes laying around wherever you're working on this thing. You can just start over and have some spares laying around. But anyway, I'll put that link down in the description. I believe it's a CX Racing intercooler. It's about 12 inches tall, 25 or 26 inches wide, and it does fit in the Cherokee. I did not modify the bezels for the headlight. I didn't modify anything up front other than, if you remember in that first video, I did space the radiator back about 1 inch. And I am now at this point running the Mishimoto oversized radiator, and that thing is thick. So I'm fitting an AC, all the AC stuff up front, plus a Mishimoto oversized radiator, plus a massive intercooler, and all of that fits and everything's perfect. Now, I will say that my fenders on that side of the Jeep, the fender popped out recently. I don't know, something shifted. I got to loosen all the bolts and then push everything back together. So I did notice that the other day. But you can make an intercooler fit in the front of a Cherokee. And just to kind of recap one other thing, the reason why I would recommend a front mount intercooler kit is because you're gonna get that constant airflow when you're out on the trails or when you're driving on the road. Top mount intercoolers need a hood scoop. You should have a fan pulling air through them, because when you're creeping along real slow, you're really not gonna get much airflow through a top mount. And on top of that, you've got all that engine heat just soaking into that intercooler all the time. So as far as ease of install, ease of design, I think a front mount is the way to go. And guys, I hope this video helped you out a little bit. Like I said, it's a beautiful day. It's a little chilly, but I wanted to come out about a year later from that original video and do an update on the intercooler setup. I will also link that original video below in the description, and I'll put a card up here so you guys can check that out and see where I came from to this point. Guys, I appreciate you for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, comment down below. I'll see you guys in the next video. You gotta love when you're out here filming on your own and the sun just all of a sudden, boom, just punches you in the face. The camera can't hardly keep up. It just doesn't know what to do. It doesn't know what to do anymore, but I appreciate you guys. See you in the next one.
If you switching up, I might have to switch a little face up. Right hand to the gavel, either way I'm getting caked up. Lying in the sand, pretty boy, what you made of? I can flip your shit, take your chick and your pay stub. I don't play the field, I hear my Dougie from the skybox. Playing with my funds, it get ugly like a cyclops. My God, I ain't been this livid since my dad kicked me out.